What would you expect from BBC2 on a Sunday night?
Speech therapy to get rid of my accent.
A massive den of iniquity.
Will our three hopefuls get what they expect from theatre school at 7:40? Progress on the railways wasn't always a smooth and safe ride in locomotion at 8:10.
Do you need a steady hand for this sort of work?
Let's hope he has with that sharp blade. Clive Anderson finds out at 9.
Take my ear off, are you?
Highlights from Adelaide of the final Grand Prix for this season at 9:35. In Filmworks at 10:15, Robert McKee introduces the highly acclaimed film The Verdict, starring Paul Newman as a failed attorney.
I can win this case.
With World Chess at 12:25, that's Sunday on BBC2. A new series in 15 minutes tells the personal stories of a generation's struggle that eventually came to symbolize the rebirth of modern America, the Great Depression. First on BBC2, the news and sport with Moira Stewart and Rob Bonnet. It's 7:05.
The mainly Muslim Bosnian army blocks all roads out of Sarajevo and halts the first land evacuation for 9 months. Hundreds of refugees are left stranded in pouring rain. The Home Secretary orders a crackdown on hunt saboteurs. They could be jailed for up to 3 months. And another false start for racing. A jockey is injured. Good evening. 1,500 refugees have been stranded in Sarajevo by a curfew imposed by the Bosnian government. For most of the day, roads in and out of the city were blocked as Muslim security forces moved in to disband the local Croat militia unit. UN convoys taking evacuees to Split and Belgrade will now be delayed till Monday at the earliest.
The Bosnian government shut Sarajevo down this morning while they dismantled the Croat army unit stationed in the city. Their headquarters was closed and the troops were told by Bosnian army commanders that they'd let them down in defending the city and that Croat and Bosnian units were at war outside it. They were told too that they could join a new Croat brigade of the Bosnian army. Despite the roadblocks, hundreds of refugees made their way to the bus station, promised that they could go to Belgrade today. Others were due to leave later for Split. Many had tried to leave before, in January, but their convoy was cancelled then. The authorities said for security reasons. This time they heard the same reasons given again. In reality, it was the operation against the Croats that stopped it. Now the refugees are home again, instructed to listen to the radio to see if there's to be another attempt. Bob Simpson, BBC News, Sarajevo.
The Home Secretary, Michael Howard, has said he wants tough new penalties for hunt saboteurs. His proposals are part of the government's new criminal justice bill. Mr. Howard described the saboteurs as wreckers and bullies. They could soon face up to 3 months in jail or a fine of £2,500.
The hunting, shooting and fishing contingent claim there are around 5 million participants in country sports. And with confrontations with protesters growing increasingly predictable and ugly, Michael Howard, in a speech this lunchtime, detailed his plans to crack down on the saboteurs, denouncing them as wreckers and bullies.
It is necessary because we must have law and order in the countryside as well as in our towns and cities, and we are seeing considerable lawlessness in this area.
Obstructing or disrupting country sports or intimidating those involved would become a criminal offence, carrying a maximum 3-month prison sentence. But Labour say there are more important things for the government to be doing.
Of course people who protest should do so within the law, but for the vast majority of people in this country, the problem is not one to do with fox hunting, but it is to do with violent and organised crime, drug abuse amongst young people, and the spate of persistent burglaries and thefts, and I think that's what people would like to see the government concentrating upon.
The centrepiece of the Queen's speech in 12 days' time will be a massive criminal justice bill, tying together the 27 separate pledges made by the Home Secretary in his party conference speech. But in raising the profile of the law and order issue, he also raises expectations, and no Home Secretary in the past 14 years has ever managed to bring a consistent fall in the crime figures. John Sopel, BBC News.
The IRA has said it will consider stopping its attacks on loyalist terrorists if the outlawed Ulster Freedom Fighters and the Ulster Volunteer Force halt their campaign against nationalists. But loyalist sources say they'll only change their strategy if the IRA ends its violence.
The IRA said its bomb attack on the Shankill Road a fortnight ago was aimed at killing the leadership of the largest loyalist terror group. In the event, one of the bombers and 9 people utterly unconnected with any organisation died. Since then, loyalist groups have killed 13 people in separate attacks, 7 of them in the Rising Sun Bar in Grey Steel, part of what one loyalist group said was the heavy, heavy price the Catholic community would pay. But such is the random nature of this kind of violence that one of those to die here was a Protestant. The IRA statement is a suggestion that if sectarian killings were stopped by the loyalists, then they'd stop attacking those organisations. But it's clear the IRA's own campaign against soldiers and policemen, an RUC officer was shot dead in a single-shot sniper attack last Sunday, will continue. And that means that at this stage there's no possibility of the loyalists having the kind of cessation of their activities which lasted for 10 weeks in 1991 while the round-table political talks were in progress. Despite some who have met the loyalists recently indicating that there might be a possibility of such a cessation, one senior loyalist source has said that nothing will change until the IRA ends its campaign completely. All this is a further indication of the complications and difficulties involved in any attempt to engineer an end to violence on all sides. Dennis Murray, BBC News, Belfast.
The Labour leader, John Smith, has distanced himself from a proposal to introduce a 35-hour working week. He said Labour will not adopt all the European Socialist Manifesto, which he signed this morning in Brussels.
We will not be proposing a 35-hour week or a 4-day week because it is not the British practice to legislate in that way. That is a matter for negotiation. All working hours and conditions are a matter for negotiation between employers and employees.
But he was criticised by the Employment Secretary David Hunt for not making his position clear.
Either what John Smith signs up to isn't worth the paper it's written on, or this is a gross betrayal of British interests, because we're fighting for competitiveness.
Afterwards. Now, gentlemen, you said about, you've done your plug for your theatre and...
President until his term expires in 1996.
Mr. Yeltsin's been zigzagging for months about whether or not to submit himself to re-election as president. But with media chiefs today, he seems...